должен только добавить, потому что я это часто, эту фразу нашего знаменитого, тоже моего знаменитого земляка Давида Ойстерха, повторяю, вспоминаю, когда он сказал, что есть два условия, чтобы стать знаменитым музыкантом. Он имел в виду прежде всего скрипачом. Да? Нужно родиться в Одессе и нужно вовремя оттуда уехать. Вот я вовремя оттуда уехал в 1968 году и сразу же поступил в Московскую консерваторию, что было очень-очень сложно. And this is my teacher when he was 40 years old, so he looks like Lenin. Yeah. And three of his pupils, including myself, and Dmitry Alexeev, and that's a Finnish pianist who was a student of his in Moscow, Eero Heinonen.
So I remember Boris as a young student. He came from Odessa, a magnificent, fantastic city which produced so many famous musicians, poets. Fantastic city. He was always very artistic, and his playing was very artistic, very bright, very virtuoso. Also, audience loves him, and that was a great time. And Bashkira was a great teacher, great musician, great teacher. And this year I'm talking about a time which was basically 50 years ago, more than 50 years ago. And in Moscow Conservatory was fantastic time. All the great people still were there. Flier, Zak, Oborin, and many others. I still remember even Heinrich Neuhaus and even Golden Vasa. I still remember them. I was very little, but I remember how they looked. So it was a great time for music, definitely. And Boris Bloch was part of this fantastic time. Then, of course, he emigrated, I guess, first to America.
What is this? This was the diploma of my receiving the Premio Busoni, the first prize at the International Piano Competition, Ferruccio Busoni, in Italy. 1978. One of Italy's most important piano competitions, and probably one of the best known European competitions. I think it was founded 1949. You see how old it is. That's why it is so important, because all of these competitions that had been established long ago, have become very important, most of them. You see, this is in Israel, as I took part in the Arthur Rubinstein International Piano Masters competition, and Arthur Rubinstein was still alive, and he came to Tel Aviv, and so was Golda Meir, and she was once the Prime Minister of Israel. And that's how I met her in Jerusalem at the award ceremonies, prize winners concert. And this is Arthur Rubinstein giving me his prize. So this is something that I treasure very, very much.
So he came and played some Beethoven, some Schumann, I remember Krasayana, and it was amazingly mature what I heard, and sophisticated and musical and beautiful and great technique, and so I was immediately taken by his playing and his personality. And so that was the beginning, and then I engaged him in Zurich for the Busoni piano concerto, which is a monster piece. I mean, it's long, it's horrendously difficult, and one can only manage it if one is really very musical and if one can see the architecture of the piece and put it into a sound frame of the piano. And I thought he would be the right person for that, because very, very few people play that piece. And so he came and was astonishing how he played it. The orchestra loved him. And we made even a recording of that, a live recording.
Woher kommt Ihre musikalische und menschliche Beziehung zur Musik und zum Komponisten von Franz Liszt?
Also wenn ich jetzt von der Beziehung zur Musik erzählen würde, vielleicht würde das viel zu viel Zeit kosten. Deshalb komme ich zum Liszt unmittelbar. Es ist eigentlich für uns in der Sowjetunion ganz selbstverständlich, dass wir die Werke Franz Liszt lernen, einüben müssen. Die begleiten alle Stationen der Ausbildung eines Pianisten in der Sowjetunion. Umso erstaunlicher kam es mir vor, als ich in den Westen kam, dass ich hier absolut andere Einstellung gegenüber Franz Liszt gefunden habe. Und dann war es mir eigentlich viel klarer, warum die technische Entwicklung, das technische, das virtuosenhafte Niveau, auf dem sich die westlichen Pianisten befanden, doch dem Russischen unterlegen war. Und ich bin absolut überzeugt, dass keine Ausbildung des Pianisten vollständig ist oder vollständig gelten kann, wenn die Werke Franz Liszt diese nicht begleiten. Und außerdem muss ich sagen, dass irgendwie hat es sich so eingeschleift, dass gegen Liszt so viele Vorurteile hineingewachsen sind.
Ich wollte gerade sagen, ich meine, das ist nicht meine Meinung, aber man wirft dem Liszt ja vor, dass er mit dieser Brillanz, mit dieser Virtuosität einen Typ von Pianisten geschaffen hat, den man dann sehr abwertend den sogenannten Klaviertiger genannt hat.
Aber Klavier ist ein brillantes, ein virtuoses Instrument. Sie können nicht Klavier spielen und diese Seite des Klaviers nicht auf irgendeine Weise betonen. Sonst sprechen Sie das Wesen dieses Instrumentes ab. Ja, und außerdem Liszt für mich ist eine Vielfalt. Es ist so vielfältig wie das Leben selbst. Und man hört oft, dass es nicht genug tief ist. Gut, es gibt Werke von Liszt, die nicht tief sind und nicht tief auch sein wollten. Und außerdem muss alles im Leben tief sein. Wir lieben doch schließlich das Meer nicht, weil es tief ist. Ich meine, und wir lieben auch Theater nicht nur, weil da Tragödien auch gespielt werden. Und diese Vielfalt Liszt für mich auch ein Beweis seiner Genialität. Außerdem, Sie finden in seinen Werken einfach alles, was in der Musik und auch im Leben zu finden ist. Nicht nur Brillanz und Virtuosität und dieses Rauschen und Sie finden auch eine unglaubliche Poesie. Sie finden
Sicher
auch,
ist es das,
Sie finden auch eine unglaubliche Innigkeit in dieser Musik.
Boris is a very interesting character, very entertaining, lively, charismatic, intense, by nature curious, very committed, challenging, demanding, critical, sometimes provocative, sometimes impatient and impulsive, but always entertaining. He is an amazing pianist and artist, and a truly gifted pedagogue. I have experienced him in all these roles many times, and on every occasion I am absolutely moved and amazed by his wholehearted devotion and commitment to his art. Whether he's playing a Haydn sonata or a Chopin etude or a Liszt paraphrase, it doesn't matter. He has the ability to penetrate to the core of the music and to convince you of the validity of his interpretation. It's always a heartwarming experience when hearing him perform, and to feel the joy he exudes when performing is truly wonderful. He creates special moments of happiness and a feeling of harmony with the world around.
Well, Chopin, in one interview I said that I probably have become a pianist in order to play Chopin. Chopin plays an enormous role in not just in my life, in life, in every normal pianist. Who said that Shakespeare said in one of his plays that I don't trust anyone who doesn't like music. So I don't trust any musician who doesn't love Chopin. So that is something that is so basic and paramount to my repertoire, to my life. And I've just recorded, or better say, I've just issued a double CD with works of Chopin that I have accumulated in the course of the last 20 years. So I put them together and I had them issued by a Viennese recording company called Gramola. And that double CD set includes 4 ballades, the second sonata, the second scherzo, 8 mazurkas, a nocturne, a waltz, a couple of impromptus, the C minor rondo. I guess that's it. Chopin is the composer who has probably the greatest appeal to the audiences all over the world, and not just audiences, the knowledgeable professional audiences, but just the people who love music. He is so accessible because of his enormous melodic genius. His melodies are so strikingly beautiful that they appeal to anybody who has a little ears, just a little. Even you, Fabian, if you listen to Chopin, even if you say you're ignorant about it, you will immediately be struck by the beauty of it. Yeah.
But Chopin's Second was the first time I had conducted that concerto, and the first time I'd conducted either of the Chopin concertos. So for me, that was a very special occasion, because whenever, as a conductor, you perform a concerto for the first time, you always remember who the soloist was, where it was, and it's always a special occasion. And this was no exception. Quite on the contrary, I was concerned, Chopin's not easy to accompany. But, I did my best, and I remember so clearly that in the performance, he played entirely differently than he did in the rehearsal. He did different rubati. He was very free. And I went off stage with him. I said to him, Boria, you played entirely differently today. He said, and he played a great compliment to me. He said, yes, because I knew you were listening. And although this was, on the one hand, a great compliment to me, it was a very good lesson for me to know that you always have to listen to the soloist, no matter what they play or how they play. And of course, his playing was very poetic, whether he played it one way or played it the other way. And it would be unfair to say that even though he played differently, that there was anything illogical about it. Not at all. It was all very convincing. It was just surprising for me that he did that, but he did that because he felt free, which was, to me, a wonderful compliment. And I remember that Chopin very clearly.
think there aren't really any rules for that. Because it all depends on the quality of the conductor. I'm not even speaking of the quality of the soloist, but I've noticed that if I am in the hands of a great conductor, and I've been in the hands of a great conductor very few times. I can count these times on one hand, on the fingers of my one hand only. Once you're in the hands of a great conductor, then everything works naturally on its own. Because the great conductor is so knowledgeable about every detail, not just in the score, the orchestra score, but also in the part of the soloist. He or she can listen to you. He does, if he is a great conductor, he does listen, and he responds immediately to anything that you might spontaneously do on the stage. Of course, there is a conception worked beforehand, of course, but it is, I would say that the conductor is responsible for the whole interpretation. So I cannot just come barge in and say, well, I'm going to play like that. No, it has to be a joint Gesamtkunstwerk, so to say. Yeah? But if it's not a great conductor, and as I say, they're very far and few in between, then of course it's a torture because they don't know well the whole thing, the part of the soloist and the orchestral part. Therefore, they can't realize, they can't react on anything, even if it's agreed upon before the concert. They still cannot react really well to everything because things might happen even in the orchestra, and they have to be aware of that. They have to coordinate all the efforts, and yet be aware of my part. It is. Of course, then in that case, it's good to decide on some basic things, tempos, and sometimes one has to catch one if there is a long passage and the orchestra has to come in, and we have to agree on how many bars we count. So this has to be done beforehand. That actually has to be done even with a great conductor. Да,
Это всегда самый одинокий момент в нашей одинокой жизни пианиста. Я всегда находил и нахожу, что профессия пианиста самая одинокая профессия в мире. И вот эти моменты перед началом концерта, перед началом выступления, очередного выступления, они всегда самые одинокие. А очередных выступлений вообще-то не бывает. У меня, во всяком случае. Каждое выступление для меня это событие, не столько событие для людей, хотелось бы, конечно, чтобы это было событием для публики тоже. Но это событие в моей жизни, потому что я сознаю в себе, в своей профессии вот эту миссию исполнителя гениальных творений классиков, которые нам оставили эти произведения для того, чтобы мы их воссоздали, дали им должное и сумели донести все то великое, что в них заложено. Когда это удается, это, конечно, самое счастливое, что может быть в жизни артиста. Это самое большое счастье, которое я испытывал в своей жизни. Я могу также сказать, что это и самое большое несчастье для меня, если это мне не удавалось, по разным причинам, часто по моей собственной вине. И до начала концерта осталось несколько минут. Я сейчас, наверное, еще раз углублюсь в себя и постараюсь не выплеснуть раньше времени то, что меня переполняет.
no? E io ritrovo questo senso del declamare, del parlare attraverso il pianoforte proprio nell'arte di Bloch, che è un'arte del canto ma anche del dire. L'ho ascoltato in moltissimi CD e anche dal vivo in un repertorio molto vasto, quindi dal repertorio barocco con Scarlatti, una bellissima silloge di sonate, fino al romanticismo, al Novecento. E in tutto il repertorio Bloch mantiene una sua personalità sonora e uno stile assolutamente riconoscibile che si caratterizza anche per un uso molto sofisticato del pedale, mai eccessivo, però nello stesso tempo riesce a distinguere i vari stili andando a fondo dal punto di vista stilistico dei vari autori. Per esempio ha fatto un grandissimo lavoro su Beethoven, ma sempre collegando i vari autori come in una sorta di percorso storico e riuscendo a dare l'idea di una dinastia musicale. Per esempio coglie perfettamente il passaggio da Beethoven a Liszt. Beethoven e Liszt con lui sono fratelli, sono veramente apparentati. Riesce a cogliere gli elementi di continuità di questi due autori e naturalmente poi ha fra i suoi cavalli di battaglia il grande repertorio romantico, Franz Liszt appunto che ho già ricordato, e molti altri compositori che interpreta, ripeto, con un grande virtuosismo, un grande fuoco, ma anche quella capacità di controllare il suono e di suonare, come dire, con un'attitudine spirituale che è propria di molti pianisti slavi. Una volta parlando con Alexis Weissenberg nei suoi ultimi anni, in un'intervista, lui mi disse che i pianisti slavi hanno una caratteristica di suonare come sospesi su una nuvola. Era una metafora, diciamo, che può essere interpretata in vari modi, però per dire che il trattamento del suono da parte di Bloch, anche quando è molto energico, non è mai violento, c'è sempre una capacità di filtrare il suono e di rendere questa bellezza del suono filtrata da una spiritualità, da un'interiorità, da un modo molto vissuto appunto di percepire il suono e la musica. E è la prima volta che ascoltavo Boris Bloch dal vivo, l'ho ascoltato molto in CD e sono rimasto stupefatto. Ho ritrovato tutta la bellezza del fraseggio, della ricerca, dei colori che avevo già ascoltato in CD, ma moltiplicata dal fatto che dal vivo il suono è un'altra cosa. Naturalmente la polifonia e la molteplicità dei piani sonori, la capacità di creare una musica multidimensionale, tante dimensioni del suono, è stata incredibile. Un'altra cosa che mi ha colpito estremamente è stato l'utilizzo del pedale, un utilizzo del pedale di cui già avevo detto a proposito dei CD, però dal vivo ho potuto percepire la libertà nell'uso del pedale, il fatto che il pedale non viene mai usato da Boris Bloch in una maniera accademica o scolastica, ma come veramente una terza mano quasi, come una funzione indispensabile a creare quella molteplicità di piani sonori e di dimensioni e di colori.
Classes. He has a special gift of communicating his ideas, not only with the students, but also with the audience, so that you remain attentive and involved the whole time. No matter which language Boris speaks, and he has half a dozen at his disposal, we feel that he is communicating with us from heart to heart, and we feel the vibes that make him the great artist that he is.
I still remember 3 years ago, Maestro Boris Bloch came to Kansas City, Missouri to give master classes for Park University students. Park University, where I used to study 3 years ago. And these master classes were unforgettable. I still remember all his advices. They were precise, they were accurate, and they were inspiring at the same time. And there were 2 lessons. I played Brahms' Variations in a Fugue on a Theme by Handel and Prokofiev 8th Piano Sonata. And even now I hear his voice correcting me in this or that measure. So what I really wish, Maestro, is a perfect artistic life for many years until 120, and good health, of course, and other things are not so matter, because if you live perfect artistic life, your so-called normal life is perfect.
Я знал Бориса Емельевича еще задолго до нашего личного знакомства как выдающегося музыканта-исполнителя. Например, некоторые его записи, третий концерт Рахманинова или же третий фортепианный концерт Петра Ильича Чайковского были в числе моих настольных. И для меня стало огромной радостью, когда он отметил мое выступление на одном из важных международных конкурсов пианистов, в которых я участвовал. И с тех пор началось наше творческое общение, которое очень плодотворно сказалось на становлении меня как артиста. Борис Емельевич открыл мне многие важные аспекты музыки венских классиков, так как он является носителем настоящей классической европейской традиции. Кроме того, он очень глубоко чувствуя музыку Листа и Чайковского, заострял мое внимание на театральности образов в музыке этих композиторов. И это было настоящее музыкальное откровение для меня. Кроме того, Борис Емельевич непревзойденный мастер выбора концертных программ, а именно как скомпоновать репертуар для концерта. И он, я считаю, по-настоящему научил меня делать красивые, стильные программы клавер-бендов. И это огромная радость иметь возможность общения с таким мастером и замечательным музыкантом, как Борис Емельевич.
Секрет в том, чтобы совершенствоваться, нужно все время овладевать новым репертуаром. Никогда нельзя останавливаться на достигнутом. Нужно все время, чтобы хотя бы оставаться на том уровне, который ты уже достиг, нужно все время идти вперед. Если вы остановились на этом уровне, какой бы высокий он ни был, и не идете дальше, вы теряете свою силу и вы катитесь назад. Кстати, это мне лично сказал Владимир Горовец. Это никогда не может быть предел совершенству. Всегда может и должно быть еще лучше. Если вам кажется, что вы больше лучше не можете, значит, вы уже идете назад.
So I had really a great rostrum of pianists who were able to play this, and he was, of course, stellar with that, and was wonderful.
Yes, but he's very at home in a number of different cultures. I mean, he's quite a linguist. His German is excellent. He speaks a wonderful Italian. In all of these cultures, he's very much at home.
Thank you, Boris, for enriching my life and that of so many others besides. Long may you live and your passion never diminish.
Cosa dire? Uno dei più grandi pianisti della nostra epoca, sicuramente.